Warning: this video contains potentially distressing information. When I visited a modern shopping center in Asia, I was warned to be careful around the balustrades on the 8th level. The danger in this design was not that the balustrade was badly constructed, in fact it was sturdy. It was that continuous seating had been fixed into the already low balustrade, where if you sit down and lean back, you may accidentally fall to your certain death. Some adults and many children have already fallen to their deaths, yet the fatal design had not yet been fixed. At my local shopping centre in Sydney, people have purposefully climbed over code-compliant balustrades to commit suicide for all to see. This is non-accidental, but could architecture make it difficult to self-harm? The question, how many people has bad architecture harmed or killed, is almost impossible to answer, especially when seeking international figures, as there is no government statistic measuring this. I could find vaguely related articles and videos which generally preferences vehicles, resulting in depressing cityscapes or poorly planned construction processes that lead to workers' deaths. So far, there is very little information about fully compliant, finished architecture resulting in injury or casualties. This video will focus on Australia's hospitalizations in accidental slips, falls, trips, etc. from 2000 to 2020 to see if our architecture is getting safer. The casualty rate due to bad housing shows terrifying figures, considering building codes from only 40 years ago is still killing thousands of Australians a year. That is potentially triple the amount that succumb to the flu. I will tell you how to avoid becoming part of this statistic later in the video. Australia continually updates building and construction standards to maximize the prevention of harm caused by bad design and materials. Even non-architectural designs must comply with the national construction codes, otherwise they cannot be given building approval or sold. Supposedly. Did you know that 97% of the world's buildings are not designed by architects? That figure may be 98% in Australia. This means architects only contribute to 2% of Australia's buildings. This leaves the other 98% to developers and builders, who should satisfy designing minimum requirements for comfortable and safe environments for humans. I am not implying 98% of buildings are therefore of lesser quality, because architects make design mistakes, especially the larger ones prepared to take risks. Building codes provide limitations and obligations to designers. For example, any ledge higher than 1 meter between two surfaces requires a balustrade, or a staircase requires a landing for every 18 steps. More specifically, openings and barriers, including decorative balustrades, must be constructed so that they do not permit a 125mm sphere to pass through, which represents a baby's head, by the way, and so on and so forth for every other safety aspect you can think of. In a recent video I made about Jerry Rippon, I mispronounced his name the entire video, my apologies. I acknowledged the lack of balustrades at the facade, which would have to have a balustrade if constructed today. I noted the basic flat roof construction and large glass panels would not be allowed to be built under today's standards, presuming solar loads, accessibility, fire rating, and water rating requirements. The legal and construction simplicity made architecture cheaper and arguably more expressive. Other cultures' architectural expectations show a freedom to express architecture more than Australian architects would like to today. The Japanese and European examples of not implementing balustrades anywhere in a residential setting leaves the risk assessment and responsibility on the individual. If you fall off a staircase, that's on you. The lack of balustrades make interiors and exteriors appear simple yet more intentional, with greater freedom to use the space, as a balustrade is literally there to prevent movement. Ensuring buildings don't collapse is obviously a necessity that the architect and structure engineer are responsible for coordinating. These codes aren't necessarily saying adults can't look after themselves. They exist so that designers cannot be sued for accidents if their design is specified to the National Construction Code. If their design is non-compliant, whoever approved the design is liable, unless the builder does not build as specified by the designer. This is a taste of how architecture is a legal minefield. Let's begin this video's investigation into if architecture has become safer since 1999 using a 2008 Monash University research paper. Straight away, all my attention on balustrades seems wasted because the highest category of injury is falls on the same level from slipping, tripping, and stumbling, making up 26.9% from 1999 to 2005. While the third highest stat is other falls on same level, making up 14.1%. Second is unspecified fall, 25.8%. It appears people were most at risk on flat surfaces in this period. Falls involving stairs and steps made up 5.6%, which may resemble balustrades have already solved this risk hazard. Without boring myself and yourself, let's total the overall injuries over this 6-year period. 1,018,651 injuries occurring in built environments becomes an average rounded number of 170,000 injuries a year. What design category was most likely to cause injury? At number 1 was the home. Number 2 was unspecified place of occurrence. Number 3, schools and public areas. We're hurting ourselves where we're supposed to be most comfortable. Unsurprisingly, these accidents are occurring across residential related inhabitancies. An interesting figure is that 17.6% of injuries occur during resting, sleeping, and eating, while work-related injuries only accounted for 5.6%. Loose furniture, such as a bed, is usually selected by the owner of the house. However, for large luxury projects, you will sometimes find inbuilt custom beds recessed into a platform, floor, or wall. Let's compare this information with Australia's official 2020 to 2021 statistics into hospitalizations by falls, slips, trips, etc. This 1-year period saw 243,000 hospitalizations and 5,300 deaths from unintentional falls. To me, that is a staggering number of mortalities from unintentional falls. It means 2020 to 2021 saw 73,000 more injuries in the built environment than from 1995 to 2005 averages. 20 years ago, slipping, tripping, and stumbling made up 26.9% of injuries. Today, this category makes up 31% plus another 20% for falls on the same level. Does that mean surfaces specified in interiors are becoming more slippery? People are forgetting how to walk safely? Or losing their eyesight? What do you think? 94% of the mortalities from unintentional falls in built environments occurred for people aged 65 and older, and women have a 6% higher chance of injury than men. Australia has stringent codes specific to aged care and accommodation. Perhaps it can further be improved to reduce where the majority of accidents are occurring, being flat surfaces. As I hinted to earlier in this video, there is another silent killer in Australian buildings which was previously allowed to be used in construction. Although banned 40 years ago, this material continues to consequently kill thousands every year for the same reason silicate-based engineered stone, which I prefer to call fake stone, has been banned in Australia this very year of 2023. This silent killer isn't a design feature, but a previously common construction material, asbestos. Because asbestos is non-flammable, non-combustible, and has an extremely high melting point, it became a popular choice for fireproofing building materials and textiles. This is desirable in a country overwhelmed by flammable and explosive eucalyptus trees which hang around and above your home. It is a disaster that it took many years to realize that when broken, fine particles hang around the air which when breathed into human lungs cannot be removed, resulting in mesothelioma, asbestosis, silicosis, and lung cancer. In 2020, it was directly responsible for over 4,000 Australian mortalities. To make matters even more terrifying, there is no safe level of exposure to asbestos particles. I even recall going to a house inspection 5 or so years ago, which had about 1,000 people visit throughout the day. In the garage was a large exposed shattered asbestos panel. I was horrified that many were walking up to it. I even bet a child would be tempted to kick it over. They had no idea If you're going to take one thing away from this video, I want it to be this. If you see an older house with warped edges or holes, you need to be certain that it is not asbestos. Just stay away from it. The typical asbestos design was paneled, so the exterior usually indicates that. If you want to do something yourself and your property is an older house, just contact an asbestos removalist professional first. Asbestos removal is a specialized profession and should be taken very seriously. In my attempt to understand if design has become safer or more dangerous in Australia, I am left being unable to answer even more questions. Perhaps you can answer some of them in the comments section. Is this uptick in hospitalizations simply due to population increases? Are injuries happening in non-compliant and old houses? Or do the construction codes need further improvements? Inversely, is introducing more standards unintentionally causing unforeseen harm? I stress the value and responsibility architecture has to provide for accidental injuries. We need to design above the minimum standards to avoid accidental injuries. Please let me know what you think should be done to make architecture safer in Australia. Let me know in the comment section if this video has taught you something about architecture. If you found it interesting, I'll put in the time to make more for our casual learning. Thank you for watching. Till next time.